Live to Capitol Hill right now. Tonight we are following several big developments when it comes to the January 6th insurrection. GOP lawmakers are claiming these rioters are being treated unfairly. A Senate investigation has uncovered huge intelligence failures before that attack. That report is coming up in just 2 minutes. But first, I want to talk about this right here. A group of Republican senators have written to Attorney General Merrick Garland. They believe the Department of Justice is coming down harder on these Capitol riot suspects than those criminally charged in last year's social justice protests. Our chief investigative reporter Eric Flack is live on Capitol Hill for us tonight with more on this developing story. And Flack, I know you got a copy of this letter, and what exactly are these lawmakers talking about here?
Hey, so yeah, the letter is right here, and what I want to draw your attention to is a list of 18 questions they have included that they want Attorney General Garland to answer. The tone of these questions clearly indicating that these senators believe there is a double standard when it comes to how the DOJ is prosecuting these Capitol riot defendants as opposed to people who were arrested after the protest, after the death of George Floyd. The 4-page letter obtained by WUSA 9 says despite, quote, numerous examples of violence during social justice protests nationwide in 2020, individuals charged with committing crimes at these events may benefit from infrequent prosecutions and minimal, if any, penalties. The letter cites a Politico report which outlines deals federal prosecutors have struck in a half-dozen federal felony cases arising from clashes between protesters and law enforcement in Oregon. Those agreements, known as deferred resolution or deferred prosecution, is when the government sets aside and eventually drops a criminal charge in exchange for good behavior or community service. DOJ's apparent unwillingness to punish these individuals stands in stark contrast to the harsher treatment of the individuals charged in connection with the breach of the U.S. Capitol building, the letter states. To date, only 2 Capitol riot defendants have reached plea agreements with the government, with both defendants expected to serve jail time. The letter also takes aim at the DOJ webpage that lists Capitol riot defendants and charges, while, quote, no such database exists for alleged perpetrators of crimes associated with the spring and summer 2020 protests. It is signed by 5 Republican senators, including Rick Scott of Florida, who said in a statement to WUSA 9, the Department of Justice needs to answer for why there hasn't been an equal administration of justice with respect to violent protests that occurred throughout our nation last year.
So there's nothing equitable or the same about any of this.
April Goggins, core organizer of Black Lives Matter DC, was on the front lines of last year's social justice protests on Black Lives Matter Plaza. She also lives just 3 miles from the U.S. Capitol. So it's preposterous to say these people are not being treated fairly.
Yeah, it's absolutely preposterous. It's a fairy tale, and I think it should be portrayed as such. Like this, they're living in a world that doesn't exist for 99.9% of the population, and clearly so do all the people who believe them.
This afternoon, we reached out to Attorney General Garland's office. They declined comment and also did not provide any specifics on if and when they would be answering these 18 questions submitted by those Republican senators. But if you would like to read those for yourselves, we have them right now on our website, WUSA 9, and our mobile app. Zoe, back to you.
Yeah, clouds. Sky's getting a little dark behind you, too. Seek some cover there. Flat. Thank you.